Hello there, everyone. SGR Sean here to talk about the current Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater trailer that Konami just dropped. It is the first in game engine look on Unreal Engine 5 that we're being shown of the game, and I wanted to talk about it because it is incredibly short, but the details that are being showcased are really good, and I just had so many thoughts that I wanted to share. Apparently, most people I've been seeing are really impressed by how this is looking, it's and it's looking really good. But there's also this talk about potentially losing Kojima's style, and some of his decisions might be overlooked and changed because of how the aesthetic is going to be different. I want to cover all that and also showcase some thoughts that I had on just game development in general and how similar some of these things can be. So that might not make a lot of sense right now, but hopefully as we get into it, I'll be able to explain and you can follow along. So be sure to leave a like on the video if you can. Anyway, let's get right into it. The first thing to look at is obviously the fact that this is the first shot of the Virtuous mission where you get to see Snake's backpack and just see all the detail immediately that's being showcased to you. Um, Immediately what I can notice from this is that there is a depth of field effect on the camera, and you can see that there's a lot of lens distortion and stuff like that, and dust and whatever on the lens itself with particles flying through the air and stuff like that. The first opening of the Virtuous mission with Snake having to retrieve his backpack is very reliant on it being like a really calming like atmosphere and stuff like that. So they seem to have nailed that as far as I'm concerned. But then you get to go even further into the next area where the swamp is, and you get to see close hand just how much detail is going to be in some of these areas. Because since this is an Unreal Engine 4, yeah, Unreal Engine 5, sorry, Unreal Engine 5 uses a thing called Nanite, which is a system which allows developers to use high quality assets at any level of detail and have the engine itself automatically make it higher quality or lower quality depending on how close you are to those objects. So that basically it looks good no matter where you're looking at it from. It won't look out of detail or anything like that depending on where you're looking at it from. Um like you won't walk away from an object and suddenly see it turn into a cube or something like that's level of detail. Here, it just does it automatically by itself, and that lets you do this, where you get to be super close up and you get to have all these detailed models and stuff like that and foliage without sacrificing performance. And so far, that is incredibly impressive how that works. There's also the water shader, how that's looking, but again, I don't even need to talk about it that much. You can just see it and see like, oh yeah, that's very, very good the way they're using it. But we get to the main part of when this stuff gets really great to break down, and you can just see how detailed Snake's model is here. You can see all the level of dirt and grime and all the scratches that are on his suit and stuff, how detailed that is, and how there's different levels of specularity and roughness being showcased here. This is a technical marvel. I don't know if you guys know this, but I make my own models as well. So you see my VTuber model right here. I made this entirely myself. And this type of detail, I can tell you, it requires a lot of skill and understanding of all elements of like how materials work, how lighting works. Like to get it to this level, especially when this is all layered on to the original to the main base model, it makes it even more impressive to me to see this level of detail be this adaptive. And you'll get to see what I mean as we go further. So you get to see how caked up Snake is in mud, right? So the moment you get into the next scene, after we get a look at the Indian gavial crocodile here, or alligator, you get to fucking see how much his scales and stuff are super detailed. You get to see his soulless eyes staring at you from across the swamp here. Like the animals in MGS3 do look good, but they don't look more super detailed. They look like serviceable, but now we get them to a point where they basically are no different than player characters in detail, because this is pretty accurate to how they look. But here we get to see the game in motion with Snake going through the swamp. And the first thing I want to point out is the item box on the top left over there. The item box for me is very important to point out because it goes to show that the developers are keeping with the theme of MGS3, or they're keeping with the original style of how the game was. So that's already one thing that I feel like I don't need to, that needs to be not worried about, is that they are really going, when they say that Metal Gear Solid 3 is going to be a one-to-one remake, this is a good indicator to understand that yeah, they're serious about that. Metal Gear as in general as a series has already moved on from the item boxes that show up throughout the series ever since like Metal Gear Solid 4. In Metal Gear Solid 4, instead of it dropping like an item box whenever you knocked the person out or took their weapon, it would just be a physics object of that weapon that you just picked up. Some people think that's better, some people don't, like, but MGS5 also ended up doing this. Whenever you knock somebody out, they would just drop their weapon immediately as an actual object and not like the item boxes or anything like that. So the fact that we're seeing the item box here and returned and or maintained, I should say, goes to show that they are actually serious about how one-to-one this remake is going to be, with mainly the gameplay seeming like the one thing that's going to be pretty different. But yeah, so now with that out of the way, we can focus on how caked up in mud Snake is now. So Snake is covered in all this mud, and you can see as he's going through the swamp that the mud is deforming as he goes through it. You can see like down here, it keeps stretching and dipping as he's stepping through the mud, which is a pretty common thing nowadays being done with games now, that they're actually able to do this level of deformation on surfaces. It's a little bit weird here though, because it feels like it's more goo than mud, and with the way it kind of stretches and deforms. But this is pre-alpha footage, so this can be changed. And that's something that you should keep in mind when it comes to pre-alpha footage, is that, oh, sorry, when it comes to games, right, anything that's in alpha stage or earlier, basically anything goes. Anything and everything could change, nothing could change. When you get into beta, that's when it's like some things could change, but the overall like package is probably not going to change. Like if you don't like a mechanic or something like that, it's probably not going to change all that much. But so since it's pre-alpha, keep that in mind. Moving on though, right now we get to see Snake absolutely caked up in mud now. We get to see the extreme version of all that. And being a Metal Gear Solid fan as I am, I know for that Snake can carry cake like and nobody's business, right? But this is a totally different type of Snake being caked up that I've never seen before. And the detail on this entire scene is incredible to watch, simply because you see it, like he's absolutely drenched in the stuff, and it's actually dripping off of him as he's going out of the swamp and like into the leaves here, to the point where he's at, like, if you look at his shoes and stuff as he's going through, he's actually picking up pieces of leaves and stuff on his shoes as he's going through the swamp here, which is a pretty interesting detail. And we get to see that later on in the trailer too. So here we get another close-up of Snake from the front, and we get to see here just again how detailed his BDU is when he's covered in the stuff. Not only that, but his face is covered in dirt and grime, and his hair is also completely messed up because of all the dirt and mud that's on it as well. which is uncalled for with these games. Snake has a beautiful mane of hair that never gets touched in the games, and now you get to actually see it completely covered. I think in MGS5 the only thing that you got on Snake's head was blood, but now we get to actually get more. You get to see more different things happen to Snake in a more, visual way here. And Snake is looking good, man. Like Snake is, his face looks a little bit weird to me, but like it's also the best we've ever seen Snake and the dirtiest we've seen Snake, to be fair too. Um there's one thing that I also wanted to point out with this scene in particular, which is that we get to see the Mark 22 Hush Puppy again. And one thing I will add, and I will tell this, if I don't know if anyone in Konami is watching, but the gun is a little bit too clean for how dirty Snake is. Same with his knife. It kind of doesn't make sense, like here. So hopefully we get to see that change as we go here, simply because it just doesn't make sense for Snake's guns to be perfect when he's completely covered in the stuff. But moving on, here we get to see the actual first area and enemy encounter of the game, which is where Snake runs into the KGB soldiers, and basically, this is the first sneaking area that you need to get through. And we've already been shown this area before, and this is the one area that I looked at that I immediately thought that the lighting was different. And so I went back and I tried to bring it up, and yeah, you can see here that the colors are, the lighting is the same, like where the sun rays are coming in and all that stuff. It looks to be the exact same as here. But what's different is that there's definitely more warmer tones to the lighting here and to the environment. So here you can see it's more blue in tone, so it's basically colder. But this is part of what I mean when it's pre-alpha, so they're probably going to be changing stuff as time goes on. So if you're looking at stuff and you feel like it's different than the original and stuff like that, it may change. So keep giving feedback like that, point that stuff out, because it's going to be important if they want to maintain the same level of atmosphere that MGS3 was giving people. They should be made aware of all these changes that they're doing and how it could be made to look better. But from my understanding of this, it may not have the same coloring as it does in the original MGS3. Like it definitely doesn't look exactly the same. But it does look incredibly good, and it still gets the point across, I feel. So now that I've mentioned all that, there is one aspect that I feel like I need to cover, and that's Snake's animations. As we've gone through the trailer, you've seen Snake's different animations for him, like being idle and crouch, and him going through the swamp, and also him crouching and pressing up against walls. So if you felt like this is very Phantom Pain-esque, you wouldn't be wrong. They are clearly using MGS5 animations here, potentially as placeholder, but I don't know. This isn't normal. Well, sorry, this isn't new for games to do, especially Metal Gear, because Metal Gear has done this type of stuff before, where they reuse animations from the older games until they replace them later. And I have footage for that to show you. But for now, here we get to see Snake's crouching animation, which looks pretty much identical to the MGS5's crouching animation, except there is a layered animation on his hands, which is where he takes the gun, he equips the Mark 22 out. You can see like the gun isn't in his holster, so it's in his hand right here. And that's normal. Snake always like does that with his gun whenever he does that in MGS3. And so the crouch animation could be MGS5 one layered on with something else. That could change, but we don't know. Him going through the swamp here is very similar to how he does it in MGS3, but it's not identical to how he does it either. So there's something to keep in mind there. And I can actually bring up MGS3 to show that. So I have MGS3 side loaded here, and I was showing how Snake's mud, being covered in mud, is a little bit different. But here you can see as he goes through the mud, you can see that yeah, he does walk through it and raise his gun up like the same way he does in that trailer, which goes to show that they are keeping attention to detail and trying to be one-to-one with everything. And yeah, I should mention, since I didn't get to mention it that much, is that it is incredible the amount of detail that they're putting into Snake being covered in mud when there's only like 2 spots in the entire game where that could happen. I don't quite remember if there's more, but I do know that in MGS3 there's 2 spots that have mud. It's this area here, and in Operation Snake Eater, whenever Snake is close to fighting Ocelot, there's also another pit of mud that he can get caught in. But that's it. So they have this entire system for mud just for these 2 sections of the game that are basically going to be the only reason it gets used. And they went this hard with it. But I digress. Like I want to see if there's anything else. They might have other uses for this at some point, but I don't know. But here you can see Snake's crouching animation. Again, looks very similar to how it does in MGS5. Looks very close. Or it could be, for all I know, it could be MGS 3D's crouching animation. How they kind of look the same to me. But I'm going to go with MGS5 here because, again, the way he stands and the way he crouches and stuff, it's very similar to that. And the same thing with, here we can see his crouching animation from the front, how it looks. And here you get to see that, yeah, he does have the Mark 22 equipped. And he's holding it the same way he would, like, standing with everything. And the last bit is that you can see whenever he, like, presses up against the wall, you can see that it's very Phantom Pain-esque as well, where it's like he, presses up on the side and then peeks out and the camera zooms in and everything. It's very similar to how Phantom Pain does it. So, and you can see he has the additive animation of bringing out the Hush Puppy, so it's not exactly the same. This part's different, but the overall, him pressing up against the wall, the way he does it and how he peeks out, that's very Phantom Pain how it works. And then finally we have this showcase where we get to see Snake sneaking up on a guard, and here you can see his animation, the way he walks is similar to how he normally does it in MGS3. It's a little bit different and a little bit more exaggerated, I'd say, than his normal walking animation, because this is how it is in MGS3 proper. Like the way he walks is very, very like there's not much effort being put into it. It's a normal stride, it seems. While in the trailer, it seems like he's more like exaggerated in his motions a little bit, which isn't bad. It's just like I'm glad to see that they're not reusing these little animations, even though they probably could have and would have been fine. But I'm glad that they're basically keeping it similar, but making it different, which is all Delta is about. So another thing to point out here is that this scene starts with him walking towards the guard, but I really think that he might have been prone, crawling on the ground. And the reason I say that is because there's leaves sticking to Snake, falling off of him as he's going through the area here. And yeah, so that kind of goes to show that there's actual particles and foliage sticking to Snake, and they're emphasizing all this stuff. Because it's really cool to me that they're doing this type of stuff, simply because MGS3 is a very small game, like comparatively to like other modern releases, right? They're not doing an open world. I don't know why people are expecting MGS3 to turn into Phantom Pain open world, but they're not doing that. They're keeping it one-to-one, and which means that they get to keep the areas super small and tight while putting the absolute maximum amount of detail that they possibly could. And this is like a little example of that. Like this is like, I'm not trying to like over exaggerate and say that this is amazing, but like it goes to show that they are putting importance on the environment just as much as they are the enemies and all the other visual elements that they're putting in, because MGS3's focus is about the environment being just as deadly to Snake as the enemies are, and mastering being in that environment is what's necessary. So it makes sense to put in a ton of detail into this because it's part of the gameplay. Like the forest of Seleno Yarsk and the rest of the areas you explore in Operation Snake Eater are filled to the brim with flora and fauna that all might kill you or do something to you or stop your mission. And so like the fact that they're paying attention to all these little tiny details, like the way mud sticks to Snake and the way like leaves are flowing through the wind and stuff and actually cling on to Snake as he's crawling through the environment and stuff, really goes to show that they're paying attention to a lot of stuff and really putting in the technical work to make it all seamless and work well. So here we get to see the KGB soldier up close, and yeah, like the we get to see a first close look at his fucking BDU and camo, which looks really nice. And we get to see the first person aiming of the Hush Puppy. We also get to see that Snake crawling into grass activates intrusion view, for those who know the naming conventions of Metal Gear mechanics. But he goes into intrusion view with a first person the moment he gets into the grass, which is again a normal mechanic for MGS3 to do. So they're keeping that and not getting rid of it, which is nice. The Hush Puppy in first person looks practically 1-to-1. Like I can't really see much of a difference looking at it. Like it definitely seems to follow the same feeling that the original has. It just looks more rounded out and smoother and obviously shinier. But I digress. Just looking at it, it looks pretty much the same, except the front side is probably a little bit more thicker than the original. But it looks good either way. And then, so I was talking about the animations. And before I move on, because I want to finish off the scene first, to show you why MGS does this type of stuff all the time, I can show you MGS4. So MGS4, when Kojima showed it off, you could see right here there's new animations for like Snake using Octo Camo and stuff like that. But he also has MGS3's running animation for when he's moving around. So there's a mix of new stuff and old stuff, like constantly in these things. So this is a common thing when it comes to Metal Gear games, or game development in general. They kind of do this kind of stuff all the time. So you get to see, and if you look at the original trailer for Metal Gear Online, you get to basically see that they do this kind of stuff where they kind of reuse animations and stuff like that. The most obvious one is MGS3's running animation, but there's other stuff like CQC animations being reused because there's no reason to change them, and a bunch of other things like that, like hanging off of ledges and all that stuff, is reusing the same animations. But that is in no way a bad thing. If there's no reason to change it, then there's no reason to change it. But Delta seems to be taking the approach of doing the same, making it look the same, being familiar but being different, which is a really good approach so far, because of what I've been seeing has been pretty good. And here we get to see this area here where the lighting is drastically different than the original. Like MGS3 had this like yellowish tone to it that is mostly gone here because the sky is a lot more clearer and a lot more neutral in color. But overall, I still think that it captures the same atmosphere that the game is supposed to evoke. Again, we're gonna have to see when it's truly in motion and see a cutscene or something like that. But if it's this good, it's gonna be hard for me to complain. Also, you can see here on the on the left where the cave is, you can see all the item boxes floating over there too. So that's another example of them keeping all that stuff. So there's not much really to add here because we get to see the bridge and the soldiers walking across it. That's what happens in the original. And we get to see more examples of potentially animation reuse with Phantom Pain, which is the ledge grabbing. And then, Snake climbing up. But then it skips here, and you can see as he's crawling out of the grass, you can see again it's sticking to him as he's grabbing a KGB soldier and putting him into a CQC hold, which that animation is completely new. And we also get to see that the guy is using an AK-47, so good on you for that one. Still keeping all the guns as they were and not changing them into franking guns like they are in Phantom Pain. But yeah, like it's a very good sequence that we're getting here, that he's actually using CQC in a different way this time. This is before Snake gets super good with CQC, so it kind of looks good that it's a little bit sloppy. Or a little bit rough, I should say, not sloppy. Because he is good at CQC from generally. But after that, it kind of just goes into just generic, into basic shots of all the areas. This is where a lot of the details kind of stop. But you can see the Keraton up there. This is just the Pain's boss fight area, which again, it looks great. It looks as it did in the original to me, but it looks updated. And here you can see the more animals that are being showcased throughout the game, like the snake being showcased here. I don't know if this is a coral snake. Kind of thinking it's a coral snake that doesn't taste that good. But here in this area, this is after you meet up with Eva, where it starts raining as you go through the swamp, and you can see here that the rain is actually pouring and it's actually making everything look a little bit more foggier as everything goes. It looks really great. But rain is rain. Rain will make anything look good. It's like, but you can see more animals like the crab going through the water here, which yeah, it doesn't seem to be affecting the water all that much. But it's a nice little shot, and we get a further area like after getting through the caves where you're about to reach the warehouse to get to Grandin's lab. You get through this one little river with clear water, and you get to see little frogs and fish swimming through this area. But it looks really good now with all the leaves and stuff. You get to see Snake with the bandana, and I think the biggest takeaway from this shot here is just the translucency of his hair and stuff. Like the lighting is actually giving him a nice little edge light with the lighting going through his hair and stuff. The looks really nice here. We don't get to see Snake properly with the bandana, but we also get to see that he's holding the XM1 rifle, which he would have gotten by this point. And just, yeah, there's not much really to say other than, yeah, it looks good still. And this is officially like the last detail that I could probably point out that is of significance to like potentially how detailed the game is going to be, besides this area looking good, of course. But if we just get through this part here, we get to see Snake one more time but close up, and here you can see what is effectively battle damage on Snake. You get to see that not only is he bloody, but I think he's also cut. Like he has cuts on his face, like near his nose and in his cheek. You also see his BDU is scratched up and it has tears and holes in it. You see that a lot of this throughout different parts of his suit, where it's basically scratched up or dirty or covered in blood. And this is like this is pretty good, like the damage model that they're using for him right now. I don't know. Again, if this shows up in cutscenes, this is gonna be insane. But it really goes to show that they're actually taking the whole 9 yards when it comes to how beat up Snake is supposed to get in this game. Because curing, healing wounds and eating is supposed to be, again, a core mechanic of the game. So what better way to emphasize all that than to really showcase how beat up Snake can get and show how he cures himself and he bandages himself up and keeps going. You also get to see that he has splitter camo on his face, which is nice. We also get to see his facial expression as he's looking at the guard over there. Like, I don't know how often this will happen, but clearly, like, the first shot is him just looking down at the floor, and then he looks up and does a, he grits his teeth, I guess is what you could say. Just getting ready to go after him. But yeah, that is probably the biggest thing that I saw that was really interesting to me, is just seeing, I want to see how damaged Snake can get and how gunshots and stuff will look, and if they're gonna put all that detail into when he has his shirt off, because keep in mind, when he's naked, that means that all of his injuries and stuff, you're just gonna see it. And if you need to bandage that up, and if and be covered in bandages, how that's gonna look. And very interesting to see just how they're going to tackle certain aspects, because from what this trailer has shown me, it really goes to, that they're actually taking every part of MGS3 seriously and trying to maximize it as much as possible. If Snake takes damage, we're going to put a lot of effort into just how that damage looks. If Snake gets dirty, we really want to put in all the detail on how he gets dirty, like what all the things that stick to him and all the other things surrounding that. So, and if he has to fight animals and eat them, we're gonna put them all highly detailed, and all the environments are highly detailed, all the enemies are highly detailed. It's like, man, this looks good. I'm not gonna say it looks like a masterpiece. I'm not gonna go that far, but I'm willing to see what's next. Like, show me what's next, Konami. I want to see what else that you're gonna do with this. See what else is gonna be changed, because what I'm seeing is good. Now you just need to show me if you can still keep it as good as Kojima's vision was supposed to be. And if you can maintain that, then we might have something here. The rest of the scenes are pretty normal too. You get to see a close-up of a vulture, and then you get to see the high mountains after fighting the end, where you go and meet Eva at the top. You get to see this area, or the MGO1 map if you're familiar with MGO1. The details surrounding this entire cliffside and stuff is really good to me. Like, it looks incredibly well done. And it definitely has that same vibe that the original has, and it's incredible, more dusty as well. But we get to see the Gru soldiers and all the barrels that you can knock over and slide, which is good that they're keeping that in. I guess they're gonna be keeping all of that in, and the gun emplacements are all still there, and the occasional chopper that flies through is still there too. And that's pretty much it. For what we got, and also you can see the beehive back there still working its magic. For what we are being shown, it is incredibly detailed, and I can't wait to see more of it. But that's my thoughts on it. Hopefully you liked my thoughts on everything and me showing a few different things about the game. I did want to end this video by talking about the switch to Unreal Engine, because a lot of people seem to have this impression that developers are switching to Unreal Engine because they're trying to cash in, or they want to chase trends and think that this is the next big thing, so they're using it. But what I've been seeing a lot from developers themselves, like Bandai Namco had an interview where Michael Murray basically discussed the switch to to Unreal Engine and Tekken 8, and they basically laid it out as such that every developer has their own reasons for why they want to make the switch, but for them it was the fact that Unreal Engine allows them to not only port the games much easier because Unreal Engine has that feature built in, but they also get to bring on new developers, and they don't even necessarily need to be Japanese anymore because Unreal Engine is very common and most people know what Unreal Engine is and how to use it. And so they can get people up to speed really quickly on what they're doing without needing to train them for months to get used to their specific engine, or they can only be Japanese because everything is in Japanese. Like now, with how much support Epic Games gives Unreal Engine, they can really support multiple developers from different backgrounds all coming in. And if they're really good at what they do, then it's gonna really show in their work. And that's what we're getting a showcase of here. We still don't know who the developer is for Metal Gear Solid Delta, but this is looking very promising, and I want to see a little bit more of it before I can really confirm. I want to see actual. What if it's in beta and a lot of this stuff stays the same? I'm going to have a little bit of a problem with it because I don't like the fact that MGS5 stuff is being reused as much as it is. But if the MGS4 example I gave is anything to be, taken and used as an example, this may just be placeholder, and it's been done before. So for what it is, it definitely looks good, and I want to see the rest. Like, this is gonna be an insane game to play when it actually drops, and there's not much else I can really say. Hopefully I covered everything. Let me know if you found any details that I kind of left out. Let me. What do you guys think of the game? Do you guys are excited for it? Are you worried? What parts of it are you worried about? Like, are you worried that Kojima's vision is going to be changed or altered in any way? Right now, I'm not getting that impression. I'm kind of getting the impression that they're really trying to go for a one-to-one recreation of Metal Gear Solid 3, with the main thing being different is the visuals and some of the gameplay. But the entire beat for beat of what happens in the game and the story, it seems like they're not changing anything of that, which is a good thing to me, because that's the whole goal for what Delta seems to be, is that the whole thing for Delta is that Delta means like the same thing but different, basically. Um and there seem to be really taking this seriously, so it may have been released just as the Master Collection was getting completely destroyed, but hey, I guess they know what they're doing. They know exactly what they're doing. I do have a video on the Master Collection and breaking down all the things that I think about that. So hopefully you'll stick around for that. I'm sorry that this video is kind of raw and not that edited, and I had to do it in one take. But I kind of have to go on vacation in a few days, so I didn't have time to actually edit anything. So consider these my raw, unfiltered thoughts on Metal Gear Solid Delta and the current state of everything. To give you a TLDR, basically I think, yeah, it looks good. Looks good, and it looks accurate to the game. There's not much I can really say that's super out there that I could point to. It looks very close to, and seems to be following the original very closely, and that's a good thing, honestly. But anyway, that's been all from me. Thank you all for watching. See you guys next time.